Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. I'm very well on this 7th of October. I had to think for a moment then where we were. And it's been a mixed weather day if we're going to deal with the weather straight off the bat.
We normally do, so why spoil a habit of a lifetime?
We've had the sun, we've had not so much wind, a lot of rain, and it's starting to get a little nippy here in England, I guess. And how's it in Wales?
Yeah, similar. Our building, the radiator started making all these weird banging noises, which probably means the Central University is about to turn the heating on, but it caused a certain amount of alarm.
Is that like preemptive warming up of the radiators and engaging them?
Oh, quite a lot of last year they didn't work at all, so it was quite chilly. I'm hoping they get it a bit more sorted this year.
Yeah, I can understand that. Our office, the aircon never works, and the radiators work too well. So it's just that you end up in a horrible office, and sometimes you have the heating on, and people put the aircon on as well, and it's just really I'm not doing our bit for the environment when that happens, and it really annoys me.
Yeah, that sort of corporately, centrally managed estates kind of maintenance thing is always fun and games, isn't it?
Bonkers, isn't it? Anyway, it's episode 141, and shall we dive into some follow-up?
We shall on the 7th of October, as you already said. So, straight into the follow-up. You've got some headphone follow-up.
Yeah, just briefly. So, I mentioned a while ago I want to buy another pair of overhead headphones. I don't know if they're over-ear headphones. What do you call this type of headphone? I don't know what they're called.
I'd call that particular type closed-back overhead headphones. That's what I'd call that.
So, some big clumpy headphones is what I'm after. I love my AirPods Max. I think the quality is great, but I really want some USB-C ones. And possibly want some that fold a little bit smaller so they're more inclined to chuck them in my bag when I'm going places on the train or what have you. So I've been to a couple of shops, actual physical shops. I've been to Curry's. Don't go to Curry's. It's awful. That was my summary. Well, the one near me was because the headphones weren't really of any quality that you'd want to actually put your head anywhere near them because you might catch something. And B, there didn't seem very many options to listen to anything. But today I happened just to be in John Lewis here in the UK, which is a big sort of department store, and you could try nearly all of these on, which was good. And so I've listed in the show notes, I've got the AirPods Max, so the new USB-C ones. You can't seem to try these on anywhere, so I'm not sure if Apple's missing a trick there, which seemed a bit odd to me. You've got the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultras, you've got the Sony XM5s, and you've got the Bowers & Wilkins PX7 S2E. I quite like getting one of these in a blue colour. They all seem to come in a blue. Blue's kind of my colour, so I'm thinking about that. But I tried them all on today. I must say the Sonys fitted really well. They felt really light. I've got quite a big head, so I need quite a bit of adjustment. Fitted really well, but what I want to see is like where's the box that they come in? Like how do they all fold up? And so I need to now go and do the YouTube bit of the review. But it's also Amazon's Prime Day tomorrow, so I'm thinking I might just take a punt on some if any of these have got any decent money off. But they're all sort of around $2 to $3.50, say, give or take. I just thought the Sony sat on my head really well. I didn't really want to like the Sonys. I kind of fancied getting a posh pair of like Bowers and Wilkins or something because they sounded really good. But I just thought the Sonys just fitted my head really well. And am I more likely to use them because they fit better? So that's where I've got to.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think it's fair to discount the AirPods. You've already got AirPods. They haven't changed enough to justify you getting just a USB-C pair. So I think, cross them off your list straight away.
That is kind of the stupid thing I would do, though.
Yeah, I know that, but don't. The remaining three, I would probably head towards the Bowers & Wilkins, but as the man sat with Sony XM2s on, I have a certain amount of respect for the Sonys. I think they sound very good. The noise cancelling is good. This generation folds better than the current generation in the XM4s. I would comment, I find the top of the headband after 3 hours or so really begins to sort of dig in a little bit. But that might just be this particular model and might be why they changed it to being less foldy than this generation.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at how they're sat on your head, and I think the new headband is slightly different. It is hard to tell. The Bowers & Wilkins, I do like the sound of. I did really want to like the Bose, but the Bose just felt big and clumpy. Just didn't really do it for me. The Sony's a good price. I mean, they're £274, which feels all right to me. So I don't know yet. I may just take a punt on something tomorrow. I'll see how the day ends. Because I always think if I buy a pen, I don't really get on with them. I can always pass them on to one of my children who will be grateful.
I think that's fair. It might also be worth if you're only just taking a punt and not expecting to love them dearly forever. I suspect the XM4s will be vastly discounted because of the last generation ones, and I've already seen, I think, a deal in a pre-Amazon Prime deal for $200 off there, so they might be disgustingly cheap actually as well, and still excellent headphones.
Yeah, so at the point of speaking, the XM4s are £200 and the XM5s are $260 to $270 based upon colour. Yeah, I don't know, but I weirdly am going for the Sonys. What I must say though is who comes up with all the model numbers? I do actually quite like Apple's way of, these are the AirPods Max, boom. They should be called the AirPods Max 2 or USB-C, I guess, but 1000 XM5 with the WH before it is not helpful for Sony.
Do you know who gets this right?
Go on.
Samsung. Galaxy S24 is the phone for 2024. Galaxy S23 was the model for 2023. Well done, Samsung. That's sensible.
Apple 100% should do that for their OSs, their chips, their phones. Just bring out everything with the same number on it. But I guess the problem you have then is when they're still shipping the A15 chip and you're in 24 because they haven't updated it in 9 years on their live product. Because that is something Apple do from time to time.
It is, so I think we can respect Samsung on that. And, at least they're being consistent with XM2, XM3, XM4. That kind of makes sense. Bowers & Wilkins is kind of from space there, really, isn't it?
I don't know what any of their numbers mean, the Bowers & Wilkins ones. And weirdly, you can't seem to get the blue ones on Amazon website, and I kind of fancy a pair of blue headphones. So, I don't know.
guess S2E is Series 2 edition, whereas the original PX7s were the original ones, but...
Yeah, maybe. You obviously know far more about it than me. But anyway, so I'm still looking, and I'll report back if I do make a punt.
No, it's fair enough. We're both being cagier with our money than we've been before. This is interesting. I have news on that too.
Okay. Should we move on to the next piece of follow-up then?
Next follow-up then, iOS 18.1 breaking to just as we went to podcast is now available for download and release. This is beta 6. Chris already has it on his phone.
I installed it over dinner. It looks like 18.0 to me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about in the main show a little bit of beta stuff and how we're feeling about Apple Intelligence, I think, as we've both been on the 18.1 beta for a while. So if you've got an iPhone 15 Pro and above, that includes the 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro, 16 Plus Max, and the 15 Pro Max. This is great. You'll be able to see Apple Intelligence on these devices. Otherwise, there's probably not a lot of point in you having gone to the 18.1 beta.
I assume wouldn't rush, and if you're here in the UK, you may as well wait for 18.2, which will come with Apple Intelligence for UK customers. I did see an advert actually whilst I was in John Lewis looking at headphones, and it said, iPhone 16 available now, and it had Apple Intelligence around it, and then obviously an asterisk and coming in December. So it looks like 18.2 will be released in December.
We haven't talked, and we haven't put in the podcast, about any of the adverts with the girl that played, it was in The Last of Us. Sorry, the person that played The Last of Us. There's been a whole sequence of adverts advertising Apple Intelligence, and they're dreadful.
I've not seen them. Okay, so maybe that's homework, and follow up for next week. We could talk about that. Because I haven't really seen any of the ads because I haven't watched a lot of television or YouTube. But it would be interesting because I feel a bit uncomfortable with Apple advertising stuff that's not available because that's very unlike Apple to do that.
I 100% agree. So let's make a little note in the show notes to put links into them for you to watch for next week. Moving on, we talked about this last week. MKBHD had a misstep with his Panels wallpaper app. He's responded to criticism, and they've changed the app a little bit to change what data is being collected by it, i.e. an awful lot less. They're focusing on improvements and feedback, so there'll be an ad-free Explore page. It was ridiculous that you immediately had to sort of go and pay. A whole bunch of new adverts. He was reasonably apologetic about it. I saw a little bit of his podcast, which he films as well, talking about the launch and how they'd hit it and how they hadn't. I'm not surprised he's making changes. I mean, he said straight out the gate he was going to make changes, really. So, well done, Marquez. I still don't think this is very good value for money. I think you could go and get Wallaroo, or you could probably go to Google image search and come up with a bunch of better wallpapers. And frankly, the ones Apple give you are okay.
Yeah, and most people want to put a picture of something they've taken there. Generally, family, pets, something interesting they've taken a picture of, a holiday. And Apple has obviously done a lot of work to make your own photos look pretty good when you have them as your wallpaper. So it seems a weird sort of time for this app to come out the way it's all been handled. Do you know what I mean? It feels like he's missed the wallpaper boat a little bit, if I'm being honest. So I just find the whole thing very bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, there's money to be made from creators, and let's face it, I think he does have a very good style that comes over from all of his videos. His matte black everything, the kinds of things he wears, his choice of t-shirts, the merch that he's had in his own store for quite a while. So I get that you'd want to monetize that to a certain degree. It's just a big misstep, as we said before, but at least he's trying to fix it.
It is a big misstep. He is trying to fix it, but he's got to be careful, because if he tries too hard to do this, he's going to end up devaluing his brand. There is a certain cachet with his brand, and you don't want to end up, ruining your cachet, your brand, for the sake of a crap app.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. He can survive this, though. But yeah, interesting. He's responding to it. I guess we'll see where we go from there. And real-time follow-up, there is the first link to one of the videos in the show notes now, so that will be there for you lovely listeners and viewers to get to when you want to. Should we move on and talk about the EU? We haven't talked about them in a week or two.
Ugh, the EU. I was trying to explain to my children just the other day that we had a vote in this country to leave the EU, and they go, well, why would you do that? And I was like, that's a very good question. Why would we do that? But trying to explain it to a 10-year-old, why we had to have a vote on it, why we then ended up leaving it, and then when he asked, well, why did we do it, what benefits did it bring, I was struggling at that point to maintain a logic. Well, I struggled throughout the whole conversation, and that's obviously the way I was leaning. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation with a 10-year-old child.
In danger of going slightly political, but what doesn't matter. I did see an interview with Boris Johnson this week. He was meeting with Tom. I want to say Tom Hardy. It's not Tom Hardy, but the main news anchor for ITV News here in the UK. And he asked him that question: what benefits do you think Brexit has brought the UK? Boris Johnson is currently pushing his autobiography of what he'd got up to while he was in office. And Boris Johnson was very clear that if we hadn't had Brexit, we wouldn't have had vaccines at the rates we had them at so quickly during COVID. And he was quite rightly pushed. Really? Is that what you're saying? I mean, we know you didn't turn up to the first 4 or 5 COBRA meetings about how we're going to react to COVID in this country because you were writing your Shakespeare book at that point. And Boris said that was nonsense. But of all the things he could have picked of the benefits of Brexit to bring, to pick something so obviously nonsense was just amazing to me.
So we left the European Union. We are going off the tangent. Because to get vaccines that we didn't know we would need in a pandemic we had no idea would ever happen. Brilliant.
For for the least prepared government. Anyway, it's deeply political. Let's not really get into that maybe. But yeah, so yeah, I don't envy you trying to explain that to your kids.
No, it was challenging. But anyway, should we get back to it? So we've got an article from the Register. Rival browsers cry foul after Microsoft Edge slips through EU gatekeeper cracks. Is this because Microsoft haven't got enough market share? Is this what this is down to?
This is what it comes down to. So this is other browser manufacturers, including Opera and Vivaldi and others, don't think it's fair that Edge hasn't been classed as a gatekeeper app. So if you're a gatekeeper app, which is X number of million active users of an app, I think, then you need to disclose what's going on. So Apple have been classed for this for a number of their things. We've talked about this repeatedly all the time. This surprises me as well, actually. It may not have that many active users, but it's default installed on how many million PCs?
I would concur with that. It's default installed on a lot. I also think having the word gatekeeper app or gatekeeper OS is wrong. You've got an OS. These are the laws of having that OS in this country or in this set of countries. Same for browser. You write in a browser, doesn't matter how big your share is, it needs to do these 10 things and make it happen. But maybe if it's smaller, you get a little bit longer run rate to do it because you might be a small development, community, like a one-man person making a browser. But I just think they should apply them irrelative of the number of users. Because at some point they're going to hopefully trip that threshold, and then when does it get applied and how long do they have to react? Just make everybody do it and give them time to do it. That's got to be the right way, in my view.
I mean, they're claiming that Edge's market share is just over 5% of the market. I mean, that's got to hurt Microsoft, doesn't it? They released this thing based on Chromium. It just shows how badly they got burned with, the end of Internet Explorer and then Firefox and then the big bear in the room, Chrome.
Yeah, it's amazing how they had the march and they cocked it up royally. I think I'm going to go with that. It's so frustrating because I actually used to quite like Edge. I hate it now because they've just stuffed Copilot in there everywhere. You have splash screens now to get into it when you install. And it's such a shame because it should be what corporate people use. You sign into your PC with your corporate account. It can all sync with Edge signed in. You don't need another installer. But everybody in the corporate world wants Chrome because Chrome is the browser of choice.
Yep. So I'm with these other browsers here, and German regulatory agencies and others that think Microsoft should be watched more carefully. It is installed on it. We do know when you click some links inside of the operating system, even if you have set another default browser, it launches. So in some cases, it definitely is a market share of more than 5%, depending on what it is that you're doing. And I do think, again, danger of going at a tangent, these sort of anti-competitive practices of disabling, as we've talked about before, you must have a OneDrive account to enable login to your PC, firing up adverts in your start menu. All these kinds of things are increasingly anti-competitive to whoever Microsoft chooses are their enemy at the moment or are their friends at the moment, depending on how many dollars they put in front of them.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. So frustrating. Just while we're on this article, I don't know if you've got the same advert I've got, and listeners, you may or may not get this, but halfway down in the article is a massive advert for Palo Alto, and apparently it's time to fight AI with AI. Oh my lordy, that sounds awful. This seems to be the world. So we're all generating AI, and then we're generating some more AI to protect us against the AI in case the AI does trouble. Not loving that, I must say. But it's got Keanu Reeves in it, which is kind of cool.
I don't have any adverts in this because I run a pie hole on my network.
Obviously, my ad blocker is working really well for me. But
clearly,
just interesting that fighting AI with AI is somebody's idea of marketing, but you can kind of see it.
Well, maybe they're a data center seller. That if you need a bit of energy on that, that's going to work out well for them.
Yeah, that is true.
iOS 18.0.1 has been released. It was released over the last week. This is a few sort of bug fixes here and there, but the primary one was that bricking of M4 iPad Pros appears to have been sorted in this. So, yay, well done. Why did it take so long?
Yeah, odd Apple left 8.0 out there for so long, but yeah, they've dropped 8.01. It's just fixed all the little round of very small bugs. I thought we'd be getting 18.1 by now, but obviously they're taking a little bit longer to get that one fully baked.
And another thing that wasn't fully baked was watchOS 11.1 Beta 3, which was freezing watches.
Yeah, Apple's not having a good run, are they? We've had freezing watches, phones, HomePods we talked about the other day, so it's not good.
I don't understand this really, because in many ways it's such a minor OS update for these devices. It's some icons and things like that. All right, the watch was slightly more significant. You get an activity view and a few other bits and pieces on the watch now as well. But there's no way on earth it should be breaking these devices.
Agreed. I wonder if there's more going on underneath than what we're aware of. Maybe they're doing some tooling underneath, for future. Maybe they've done a lot more with Apple Intelligence than we realise, than is laying foundations for future releases. I don't know. There seems to be quite a bit of this at the moment.
I suppose it's possible. Anything else to follow up?
No, I think that's it.
Tell us about the first story in news then.
So more privacy changes for iOS 18. Apparently iOS 18 could spell doom for social apps. So what's going on here then? So there's a new contact sharing prompt that's more restrictive than what it is before. We often get this though with Apple, and I'd love to know. You kind of want to see, well, what did it actually cause as much damage as people have alluded to, if you know what I mean? Because we had this before, didn't we, with the ask your app not to track you and things like that for cookies and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm a bit mixed on this, really. We know the danger of sharing your contacts, that it's one of the things WhatsApp asks for example. If you want to share contacts, they may not be able to access your encrypted chats, but there may be contacts within your address book that you absolutely don't want to share their addresses on. And it's not like you have given consent to me to share your contact with WhatsApp or Facebook or Meta or whatever they're called these days. So I kind of get Apple being the guardian here, and when they did this and Facebook cried wolf and said this is going to end our business, and it didn't. And it feels to me a bit like this is the same thing again. Users who want that functionality, you could throw up all the warnings in the world at them and they're still going to share the contacts or share the thing with Meta.
They're just going to tap through all the screens, aren't they? That's all they're going to do. So what they've done here then is the previous contact allow screen was just allow or don't allow, because you get this as well when you install Microsoft Teams. I'm like, well, why does Teams need access to my personal address book? I use Teams for work. I've got a very separate address book for work. Whereas now there's going to be a bit more granular, like you can with photos. And in photos, you can obviously limit in most apps the photos you share, or you can allow full access. I think this is just the right thing. Apple's proven they've done it with photos. They're taking the same methodology and applying it to contacts. It does kind of make sense in my view.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of problem with it really. And let's face it, this isn't going to kill it the next big social network, because if it's my kids or your kids or anything to go by, they'll just click, 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 give it to me because all my friends are on there.
100%. And Apple should be doing this more, I think, when you allow things like to look at Bluetooth. I loaded up an app to update my camera, and it was like, do you want to allow Bluetooth, yes or no? So why can't I just allow Bluetooth to my camera, not to anything else that's Bluetooth, that's in the vicinity? You kind of need this granularity more and more now, I think.
I have struggled a little bit with this in Sequoia, actually, that it throws up all these alerts about this app has requested access to your network. And I'm like, oh, why does this app need access to my network? I've been using this app for years. What's going on? Is this something new? Or I don't really understand. So I agree with you. There should be more. If they're going to bombard us with this level of things, they need to be more expressive about what it is we're actually agreeing to.
Yeah, and they need to allow developers, if you can't see your device or your network here, you need to give us more permissions. It needs to be easy to maintain.
Totally. Moving on, a bit of sad news, really. There's a lot of good news for Vision Pro people. Sorry, what was that?
I was womping because
womp womp.
Continuing on from womp, Juno app has been asked to be removed from the App Store by YouTube. So this was an app for watching YouTube videos on your Vision Pro. The developer made this app. It was available quite early on, if I remember correctly.
Day one.
YouTube have done nothing to provide an app for YouTube on the Vision Pro, so this developer made Juno, and they've asked to remove it because it's not permitted in their branding guidelines, which feels a bit of a shame. The developer did come back and point out that he was living within the guidelines and clearly read them, so it just feels like YouTube's being a bit spiteful. I mean, if they'd have brought their own app out and then asked this one to be removed, you can maybe see it, but the fact they're not providing a first-party experience is disappointing because they have an iPad app. It's probably not that much more work.
I don't know if spatial video is different, if YouTube have to do something extra. I mean, the fundamental thing is, I feel sorry for Christian Selig here, because this is the same developer that had his Reddit app banned, and he fought that one. And obviously his learning from having Apollo, which was the name of the Reddit app banned, was that I'm not going to fight this anymore. If some big company comes after me saying, remove your app, he's just going to do it. So he chose to take it down. I think it's quite telling for the Vision Pro that YouTube, which wants all the eyeballs on every device I've ever used, televisions, weird browsers, Chinese branded phones, all manner of things. YouTube is always there, and they're showing no signs of putting it on the Vision Pro. Is it too soon to say the Vision Pro is dead?
No, I don't think the Vision Pro is dead. I think it's like Watch Series 0. I was trying to remember back then. Apple will iterate on this. This is a good starting point. They've got it out there. They've proved it works. They now need to iterate on it, get it smaller, get it faster, get it more cost effective, obviously. That's what they're going to do. That's what I think they're going to do, like they did with the Apple Watch, like they've done with the Apple TV, like they've done with the iPhone. You release the OS every year, you slowly knock off the edges. They need to get all the apps on there. I think they're doing it a lot slower than I'd anticipated. I thought by now we'd have all the iPad apps on there, because surely they just need to recompile them. All the iWork apps on there, that kind of thing. All the stuff that runs on the iPad, why is it not just running on Vision Pro? Apple needs to get their own stuff there to prove to others it's very easy to do it, and it's frustrating they haven't done it.
I admire your optimism. I think we're in a different world than we were with the Watch. The Watch was a small, cheap device that developers were keen to get on people's wrists, and if you look at the amount of Watch apps that there are now, there are significantly less than there were for the Series 2, Series 3 generation Apple Watches.
Apple burned a lot of developer bridges there, didn't they?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that goodwill is not there from the community in the way that it was. And if big developers like Alphabet, call them the proper name, can't be bothered bringing YouTube to it, the only major software manufacturer that has, really, not even Apple, is Microsoft bringing its apps there.
Yeah.
And that's odd. And Microsoft discontinued HoloLens this week.
Yeah, that is odd. But I wonder if they're in bed with Meta and Apple on this one.
I don't know. I'm not having good vibes about the Apple Vision Pro. They've got to come a long way to get the price down. They've got to tell a significant developer story to get people back on board with it. I think you see a direction of travel both with the iPad and with the Watch that developers aren't betting big on that platform anymore. They do the bare minimum to bring their apps to it. In a universal way. I look at Tapestry, the app that I've been using that I supported in Kickstarter. I mean, the Mac version is all right. The iPad version is the same as the phone version. There's nothing special sauce for the iPad version. It's a great app, but you can tell it's iPhone first.
Yeah, it's not their core market, is it?
That's the developer story. They can get on there. They have a certain amount of control. They know what's going to be accepted. They know what Apple's happy with, although that's a bit variable from time to time as well. And unfortunately for Christian Selig here, Alphabet went a different way, and now all those Vision Pro owners have got to use Safari to watch YouTube, and that is not an optimal experience.
It's a bit pants, isn't it, for the number one video streaming platform in the world, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It is disappointing. I do think Apple will chip away at it. I do wonder whether they'd ever come to a point where, why don't we just do some glasses, a bit like Meta has announced with Onion, their developer thing that they won't ship, and here's some glasses, but we do the compute on your phone and we make it work. I'm surprised they haven't done anything like that.
But that's where they all want to be, isn't it? They want AR. Apple never wanted VR. They wanted AR. That's what they were building into the phones and the iPads, and the LiDAR sensors for in the phones to do AR, augmented reality, not virtual reality. None of them are in a position really to do augmented reality well, because it's hard. If it was easy, Google would have done it back with the Google specs, and this Project Orion thing is $10,000.
Yeah, but it's not really a product, is it, that Meta have announced? They've just said, we've got this cool tech and software. I'm curious to know why Apple didn't look at using the phone, though. Even if you had to plug the phone in, why they didn't use that for their version 1 to get them going on the journey, rather than... Because that would have taken a lot of cost out, potentially, of the device. But maybe it's not good enough.
What power would it have taken from the phone to support?
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see where Apple go with it, though. I think they just need to keep iterating on it, which is what they're usually very good at, but hopefully it won't die off too soon, because it does look quite an exciting platform. It just needs that continual evolution.
Again, I'm happy you've got optimism, and I would like to see them push forward with it, but I think they've may have burnt a few too many bridges with this, and it's a perfect storm of cost, loss of developers, increasing litigation and legislation from other people who from regulators who want platforms to be more open, and Apple always being very resistant, thinking their way is the best. So we'll see. I mean, I'm ready to call it as dead now. Do you want to give it another 6 months? What's your time scale on this?
We need to wait till WWDC in June.
That's quite a long time. Okay, fair enough. Let's see what happens.
It's only 9 months, but it will be telling to see what Vision OS 3 looks like. Is it another version 2 which didn't really do a lot, or is it actually something substantial where they've had a full year to iterate on it?
The Apple Vision Pro remains a product in our lineup.
I hope it doesn't go that way. I know I haven't bought one, but it's a lot of money for what it is.
It is a lot of money. Something else that might not be quite so much money, though, is that newer capacity hard drives are possibly coming down the road. So this is a story in Tom's Hardware based on new technologies in hard drive manufacturing. And this is proper old school spinning bits of metal hard drive manufacturing, predicting that we could be up to 60 terabyte drives by 2028. That's a lot of storage.
We need it though, don't we? So I'm not surprised by it. But 60 terabyte, yes, please bring that.
60 terabytes at an affordable size, now you're really talking. I mean, I've got an awful lot of storage here, as discussed previously on this podcast. I think I still have 18 terabytes free on my new NAS, so I've got plenty of storage, but, 2 60 terabyte disks is probably most people would ever need. Those 2 bay NASs start to look far more interesting.
Could you imagine how much Apple would charge you to stick one of these in your Mac Pro? It would be a ridiculous price with the Apple tax on the top.
Yeah, they're not going to put spinning Rust into a computer anymore these days, but for the bigger sort of storage piece, I think these are great. It's interesting, SSDs are getting bigger as well. I have seen sort of up to 10 terabyte SSDs for about £1,000, which is getting into the realms of possibility if you do need a lot of storage.
Yeah, and it's only going to come down over time, isn't it? It's, you know where it's going to end up.
You would hope so. Barring natural disasters, if you remember what happened to SSDs, when there was the hurricane in Asia, and that caused the prices of all SSDs to go shooting up during the pandemic.
It did, yes. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? Yeah, didn't a boat crash or something and block this?
It was a whole sequence of things. I think there were fabs underwater and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, something else that I thought was just worth spending a couple of minutes on is possibly the worst trend for home screens that I've seen in some time. So this is a story in 9 to 5 Mac on October the 3rd that there's apparently a trend for bookshelf backgrounds for your iOS apps. So now you can arrange your iOS apps in whatever arrangement you'd like. A trend has appeared that people turn their iPhone and click on the link, by all means, in the show notes to see what we're talking about here, to give yourself a bookshelf looking background with like cats and plants and things on the shelves, and then you arrange your icons on the shelf. And I'm sorry, this isn't for me.
It's not for me either, but I can see why some people might like it. It's been a bit cutesy, but no, it's gone very skeuomorphic there, hasn't it?
It has. It's interesting. They're already one of the creators of these things. iKristin has already got a Christmas-based one ready to go with a sock hanging on it. If you're desperate to have one of these for your iPhone background, crack on.
Oh, I can see something my kids would do. No, this is not for me. I'm with you.
Yeah, oh well, I'm glad we agree on that. And in more old men shout at cloud news. Well, not quite. This is about databases found on the register. Did you know that Walmart no longer owns Asda?
Yes.
Well done, you. You work in this industry, so that's probably not entirely surprising. I suspect not a lot of people realised Walmart owned Asda to begin with. Even fewer realised it sold them, and now you're in a situation where they're left with massive IT debt from the Walmart sell-off.
Well, just back up 1 minute though. So Walmart owned Asda. Asda's a big supermarket here in the UK. They have massive stores. They have lots of little stores. And basically, two entrepreneurial brothers who own a lot of garage forecourts here in the UK bought Asda off of Walmart in essence, and this is why you will see Asda in a lot of garages, because they've taken their two businesses and gone boom and nicely merged them together, which is genius. Oh look, we've got lots of forecourts that need shops and we've just bought a big supermarket. So that's what's happened there, just as a bit of background for everybody.
That's very good. I didn't realise that. That's very impressive. The thing that stood out to me in this story, though, is this is migrating a database from the previous system that they had before when they were under the Walmart ownership to whatever it is that they're moving to now.
This is quite a tricky carve-out because you've bought part of a bigger group. You're carving out, and I've been through one of these. You're carving out your piece of data that you want to take with you without taking any of the systems. So it can be very complicated, as I think you're about to tell us.
Yeah, so this is a $32 billion business, effectively, Walmart, Asda. But this is just an interesting thing. As they move to this new Manhattan system, there's a 10 million item mismatch between the two systems.
That's a big number.
I mean, that's not a rounding error, is it? That's significant. I mean, in the great scheme of how many oranges there are on this, or whether this is the odd plasma telly or not, out of a $32 billion business, this is probably not an awful lot of 10 million item mismatch, but it seems like a very large number to me, 10 million.
Well, the sheer quantity of SKUs or products that Asda sell must be absolutely huge, because they are they're a £24 billion company, as you've said, but they sell everything from Lego to clothes to apples to frozen food, everything. So I'm not surprised, and I did actually reference this to my board in that this is how a migration can go, because this was widely reported here in the UK. So they are definitely going through it, and they're probably time bound as well to get it done quickly as part of their separation costs. There could be, I guess, financial penalties not to do it, but equally, I guess, there's financial penalties to do it too quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of something that's not a rounding error, Tim Cook has sold a bunch of his shares. So he's going to be $50 million richer after selling 223,986 shares. Tim Cook clearly needs the money.
Oh, I can't even imagine what you do with it all. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? You must have so much money. It does look, for a company like Apple, and you get Tim standing up and saying how good all the good they're trying to do, and then he gets himself $50 million for just to spend on himself and his family.
Well, Tim's salary is $3 million annually, so that's where he's starting from.
It's quite low though for chief exec of the biggest company. Second biggest company in the world now.
Well, you start there. So $3 million base salary, and then $47 million in stock options. So well done. So and then another $10.7 million in performance-based rewards, plus another $2.5 million in other compensation, such as 401k contributions, life insurance premiums, and things like that. That's not a bad year's work.
It's not that shabby, is it?
I think he could live with a mere $3 million salary based on everything else.
But he must love his job if he keeps working, because he couldn't have needed the money even before he was CEO. He'd been there a long time. He was probably very comfortable.
He still owns another 3 million shares. So if selling 223,000 of them nets him $50 million.
Wow. He probably has to hold a certain number, a ratio of his salary in stock and stuff. That's quite a common thing for people in these positions.
I'm just jealous, really.
The problem here, though, is the gap's just getting bigger and bigger between the highest paid and the lowest paid person in one company, let alone in the world.
Yeah, if you are an Apple Store employee and you're looking at Tim Cook getting his 50 million bonus for selling off some of his shares, you're probably not feeling that much love, are you?
No, not at all.
Somebody else that's not feeling the love potentially are children under the age of 14 in the UK. So this is a story in The Guardian from earlier this week about a pact to withhold smartphones from children under the age of 14. So the point of this is it started as a WhatsApp group, a couple of village councils and things like that trying to say that we're going to not give their children smartphones, and it seems to be gathering a certain amount of pace. And we've talked about this kind of thing before. I know you've had a lot of thoughts about when you should give your children smartphones and when was the right age. I went through the same sort of thing. But this started in Scotland, in North Berwick. They have 194 children signed up to this, and they're not going to give their kids smartphones till they hit 14.
So I'm mixed on it. I think if you've got a whole school agreeing to it and a whole cohort of friends, then I think that does make a lot of sense. Our view was our children should have phones when they start walking home from school. If they've got any problems, they can pick it up, they can text, they can phone, they can shout if they need something, if they want to go to the park or what have you. That was where we ended up with it. I think it was the right call. I still think my kids being 11 is too young, but if they're going to walk to school, then I'd rather them have something and have a mechanism to contact me. But all their friends have it, whereas if all their friends didn't have it, I'd probably be in a different place. But it still doesn't stop something bad happening on the way home from school.
No, it doesn't. It's a peace of mind for parents, that part of it. And I do understand the parental concern about cyberbullying, what social networks, stalkers, all that kind of stuff that goes on that we've talked about before is as much about education as it is about the responsibility of the platform owners. So I do get the sort of both sides of this story, really. The parental concern, giving them a device, knowing where they are, worrying about what's happening, the potential exploitation of the children, both by their peers and by others. So it's a lot to take hold of. But part of me wonders, okay, so they might not be on their smartphones doing it, but do they go home and use their computers and then log on to whatever these networks are, and then it happens anyway, and they sort of share their WhatsApp user tags or their whatever. It was Kik when my kids were young, which is long gone, the Kik social network. But there's always something is going to pick it up, be it TikTok or be it whatever comes next, that they'll find out about these things in the media somehow. They might resent the parents more for not having smartphones, but I do get the imperative to sort of try and defend them from a lot of this stuff. Up to an age where they're possibly better able to make decisions, or maybe they'll just make worse decisions when they hit 14.
Yeah, it is tricky, I think. I think I'm quite lucky with my kids. They generally come to me and go, Dad, somebody sent me a text, but I don't know who this person is. And like my son obviously had a reused phone number when we bought his SIM card. So he was getting texts from a car company here in the UK going, your MOT's due, do you want to bring your car in? And he's like, what's all this? And I was like, they've obviously registered this number. They've, for whatever reason, given the number back to EE, and then you've got the phone. And then same with social networks, you get people reach out and go, want to befriend you, and we've had to tell the kids that if you don't know who they are, you don't do it. We check their phones from time to time. I think we're quite lucky though, because our kids are usually asked before they do something, but obviously not all kids are that way.
Fair comment. Anything else in news?
No, I don't think so.
Let's do a bit of media. We've got a little bit of media to talk about this week. I've been watching some things. You've been reading some things. Shall we kick off?
Yeah, let's do it.
So at the weekend, I had a long outstanding desire to watch Mean Girls. So October the 3rd, if you're a Mean Girls fan, is Mean Girls Day, because that's the date they bring up in the movie. In the same way 22nd of February is for those of us that like Hot Fuzz. My kids had watched Mean Girls. I said to them I'd watch Mean Girls. So on October the 4th, one day late, I watched Mean Girls. And I didn't hate it. I actively enjoyed it, I'd go as far to say.
Did you watch it with your children?
No, I watched it by myself.
Okay. So it came out on the 30th of April 2004, so it's a 20-year-old film.
It is. It doesn't look it particularly. What might make it more interesting, maybe not to you, but to some people, is Tina Fey is the writer of this, as well as starring in it. Tina Fey, who was Saturday Night Live alum, wrote all of 30 Rock, married to Lorne Michaels, very influential script writer, a very funny person in her own right, really, and wrote this, and it's really well done, and the cast is really impressive. Although Lindsay Lohan's gone off the rails a little bit, everybody else in it is very, very good. It's a very teenage movie, but it's well done. It's slick, it's well executed, and genuinely funny in places, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Fair enough. We've all got our thing.
Yep. It's not normally the first thing I'd pick, but I would say if there was nothing else on, or a slightly weak movie on, give it a go. You'd enjoy it more than you think you would.
When I saw this in the show notes, I thought, this is going to be a link to like a new reboot or probably a TV series in the current era. And then I clicked through and I was like, oh no, this is the original Mean Girls film.
There has been a reboot. I didn't watch that one.
Oh, okay.
The second thing I started watching is called Shogun. It's on Disney Plus, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. So it is set in a Japan of about the 1500s, I think, when the only sort of country that had any contact with the Japanese were the Dutch. And it tells the fictionalized story of an English sailor who actually makes it through. Sorry, the Portuguese, not the Dutch. Who actually makes it through into Japan, and sort of the intrigue that brings with him, as he obviously has knowledge about sailing, cannons, flintlock rifles, all that kind of stuff, and how that might change the power dynamics in medieval Japan. And it looks fantastic. It's largely subtitles because it's filmed in Japanese. What a terrific show. It just looks $1 million.
I'm glad it looks good. Why is having a TV show? Can't we just have some films, please?
TV is the future, Chris.
I know, but I do get put off sometimes when I see it's a series and it's going to be a big time sink. Says the man who's just watched 3 extended editions of Lord of the Rings, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. If you think of them as mini movies, though, that might not be a bad way of doing it. I mean, we bemoaned last week how dreadful Apple TV's film output was. So if they can't do films, then you got to give the TV a bit of a shout. You enjoyed The Bear on Disney Plus. Give it a shot. Give it a shot, Chris. I think you'll like it.
And Slow Horses is amazing.
And that's TV.
I know. Maybe you're right. It just puts me off initially when I see the time sync required.
It's just more. You should think of it as being more consumable. You can stick on 45 minutes or an hour far more easily than you can think. Right, 90 minutes or 2 hours or something like this, or Killers of the Flower Moon, 7 hours of your life you'll never get back.
Well, I've just, like I say, watched Lord of the Rings Extended, and that was good 10 hours in, but I've managed to slot it in. You're right, I probably should do it in more bite-sized chunks like I do with something like Slow Horses.
Absolutely. Then a little thing I'm looking forward to, also in Disney Plus, music by John Williams. So John Williams is the composer of Star Wars, Superman, Indiana Jones, and The Last Crusade, et al. Fantastic composer. Really enjoyed almost everything that he's done. So I'm just quite excited to see this, really.
And it comes on the 1st of November.
It does indeed. So one to look out for on Disney Plus. And these documentary type things are often quite well done. You and I have talked about them before. For example, we both watched the Steve Martin one recently. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to this.
No, that looks good, and because it's got Star Wars in it, I may be able to get a child to watch it with me, which would be nice.
That would be good. The next thing is a link, which I don't know if you've managed to watch the video yet. If we'd had our new streamy thing working, the viewers could have enjoyed Chris's live reaction to this. But just click through to this Threads link posted by the ex-tech journalist Gary Whitta, who I think went on to be a scriptwriter in Hollywood. And it's an AI-generated movie of I don't know what really, but it's just the most incredible sequence of put-together things, and things happen that you're just not expecting, really. And Chris's baffled reaction I'm thoroughly enjoying right now. But it's amazing that that's all entirely AI-generated, but the conclusions it draws of what's going to happen next is just really quite out there. So I'd recommend all viewers or click in the show notes and just see what's happening with, what starts with somebody welding and ends up the way it ends up is just the most remarkable thing, really.
Yeah, sorry, it is taking my attention. It is bizarre, but this is the world we're now dealing with, isn't it? Is what's real and what's not real anymore. That is the question, isn't it?
It's really quite a thing. And Gary says he's obsessed with this hallucinating AI. It's the closest thing I've ever seen in the real world to what a dream feels like. And I think he's captured that really well.
Yeah, that is quite a good way of summarising it. But yeah, for our listeners, it's not a very long video. You should watch it. It is bizarre.
It's only about 30 seconds, but in the same way I couldn't get the hands right when we started talking about this before, AI gets almost nothing right about this, but it's quite an amazing flow of sequence.
And it seems to work. It seems to go from one sequence to the next. You know, the transition's very good.
Yeah. So that's that. And then lastly from me, I just thought it was worth pointing out that the British Pathé newsreel, all of it, is now available on YouTube. So from 1894 to 1970 something, I think, is what the Pathé news service was available from. All of it is now on YouTube. So if you want to check out some classic videos about tin mining in Cornwall or things during the Second World War or anything, you can now visit that YouTube channel and get it all.
That's quite an amazing archive to upload. A, to still have, B, to transfer to digital, C, to upload to YouTube. It's quite a thing. I had a quick look at this before we recorded. I can't believe that they've not transcribed, but uploaded that whole archive. That's just seems an insane amount of work.
It's amazing, but it's our history as well, isn't it? You know, how many?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. So I thought it was worth pointing out.
That's really cool. I think that's good. I wouldn't mind to go and have a click round because some of that will be, you know, like clips of London and stuff like you say in the World War, will just blow your mind because it will be just so different to how life is now.
Yep, absolutely.
I was then going to add some media, so I've gone for some book media because I've been reading quite a few books lately. So I thought I'd just quickly touch on We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, which he's had a great run. He's done 4 books already. This is his 5th. It's a new series, and it's very similar to his previous books, but it's just one I really enjoyed, and I blew through 400 pages very quickly for me in just over a week or so. It was just a funny-ish book. He's very good. He's similar sort of style to his previous books and similar sort of characters, but just done really well. I just thought I would recommend it to people if you want a light-hearted read. It's set in the UK, but with lots of travel to America and Dubai and what have you. So I would give it the thumbs up.
Nice. I haven't read any Richard Osman, although I like Richard Osman a lot.
Have you not? Some of his humour I actually quite enjoy because his previous set of 4 books were all set in the same world, all here in the UK in present time, but same characters, and they're all around the age of my parents and my in-laws, and so it was just quite amusing to read how he captured them really well. I thought that sort of generation, just very enjoyable, and he's done amazingly well off the back of it.
Fair enough.
And my second book, which kind of links back to our British Pathé piece, is a book which I'm still reading, but I've nearly finished it, and I actually saw the author today because we have a local literature festival here, and he was talking about it. It's a book by Robert Harris. It's called Precipice. He's written lots of books. He did Fatherland and Enigma and various other books you may have heard of, and The Ghost, but this is a book about World War One. The Prime Minister at the time sent his mistress love letters, and she kept them all. And then 50 years after the war, they all got archived, and they've got his side of the love letters he sent to her that are real. But we haven't got her ones because he'd burnt all of the ones that she would have sent him back. And he's basically written a fictitious story around the real love letters and the real events of World War One unfolding, which is something he's quite good at doing, taking a real event and having a bit of fiction around it. He also did The Fear Index, which had Josh Hartnett in it, which was a TV series. And it was set in 2008 when we had the big crash about basically AI, buying and selling shares and making billions of pounds. And he just does a really good job of it, and it's a really enthralling book. And what's interesting though is in London there used to be like 10 postal services a day and things, and it was just insane to think how post used to be. Because obviously there was no email, there was no other way of communicating across the country, sending telegrams, which is super interesting how they sent a lot of letters and all the different postal services, and now I may get 5 things a week in the post, if that makes sense. So just a really good book, really well written, would definitely recommend. And again, a pretty quick read, to be fair.
I have read some Robert Harris. I read Fatherland and a couple of the others, and he's a decent author. He's not one I would immediately reach out to grab off the shelf again, but I have quite enjoyed the odd one when I've read them here and there.
look, it's not for everybody. I've quite enjoyed quite a few of his works. Like I said, the Fear Index book was brilliant. How he, like I say, orchestrated that around the financial crash, and I just thought it was really well done. I've enjoyed quite a few of his works, but they're not all brilliant. But it's not for everybody. But it's something I enjoy.
Fair. No, good. Nice to get a book recommendation. Games. So first story is as much for you as anything else, because I know what a big fan you are of Blizzard Entertainment, the company that came up with Warcraft, and we talked about them in some depth last week. Warcraft 2, StarCraft, big quality games like that sort of descended from your current favourite Command and Conquer. Anyway, this is just a bit of a podcast and then a book, should you choose to get it, called Play Nice, The Rise and Fall and Future of Blizzard Entertainment. And from what I can tell is that, obviously there's a toxic background started to appear within Blizzard around the time that it merged with Activision, which isn't a surprise given all the stuff we've heard that was going on at Activision at the time.
Yeah, it's really disappointing, isn't it, when you see these things? Like, Blizzard was a great company, and we've had the same with companies that EA have swallowed, and then they've obviously been acquired into Activision and then latterly into Microsoft. And you just hear about this horrible culture. And it's just horrible what people have to go through in some organisations. But you look at something, like Blizzard, how can a massive company like that, that's international, really well regarded, have this internal culture? It's a horrible thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing that it's acceptable in this. It's not acceptable in this day and age, but
it's amazing it happens and it goes on for so long. I think that's where you were heading.
It has gone on for so long. It's almost like tradition because they're a game developer, and that would have been at one point an almost entirely male-dominated culture that they're very unwilling to change from that sort of original ideal, it would seem.
Yeah, it's deemed like acceptable in that market sector that, well, if you work for a game developer, it's going to be like this, whereas it shouldn't be like this at all. I can't stand it.
Corporate culture is difficult to change. I mean, I've worked in large organisations such as the NHS before now, where it is very difficult to move that kind of thing. But they are behemoths in the sense that the NHS was the biggest employer next to the Red Army for a very long time. Probably isn't anymore. It's less of the Red Army than there used to be as well. But that sort of massive corporate culture is hard to change. It's amazing how endemic it is in small organisations as well, though.
Yeah, that's fair. We've just been issued a culture handbook at work to tell us how to behave, which I found quite interesting.
How'd you behave, Chris?
Well, I don't think we should need a handbook to know how to behave, if I'm being brutally honest. But there you go.
I wouldn't argue with you. I think most of this stuff should just be, what's culturally acceptable and, is the right thing to do.
That's 100% it. Do the right thing. That answers nearly all your questions if ever you're in a dilemma, I think.
But there are people who don't have the right kind of context or, either willfully or through lack of experience knowing how to deal with some cultures, people, choices. So I don't necessarily know that it's harmful to have that as long as the organisation isn't particularly, it's not being rammed down people's throats. I'm not saying this very well, but I think, there's being human, frankly, is where I want to be.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And we do have a lot of young people that is their first job, and they do need a little guide on how to behave sometimes because they've come from an educational background where they've been a student rather than an employee.
Yeah, which may not give you the best concept. Anyway, moving on. Just a little thing about how the next version of Unreal, the next version of Halo is being built on Unreal Engine 5. I think this is quite telling that we're seeing sort of a contraction ever since, I've forgotten the name of the game engine. We reported on the game engine that sort of self-destructed by changing Unity. The Unity game engine, when it fell apart. There's been similar allegations made against Godot, which is another open source game development engine this week. But big developers once upon a time would have written their own engine. Halo was written in its own engine once upon a time. We're now down to Unreal Engine powers almost everything, with the exception of DICE's Frostbite engine in Battlefield and things like that, which is used for some things. But you see Unreal Engine 5 in almost everything, and I worry slightly about the lack of ability for developers to create their own engines for innovations. I mean, Doom was such an innovation when it came along, when Romero and co wrote that engine back in the day. If you're not having that sort of innovation and everybody has just become developers on a particular tool chain, where's the innovation they come from for the next big, it's not just first-person shooters that this engine powers, it's all sorts of things.
Yeah, do you think we're all going to end up playing the same game just with a different skin on it, if you know what I mean? Because we're all playing something that's built on the same engine.
Possibly. I mean, we're going to talk about Gran Turismo 7 in a minute, which I know you're really looking forward to. But you could see a future in which a Gran Turismo was built using the Unreal Engine because the lighting is that good and the physics are that good and, you know, all the things they've built into it. So why would Polofony Digital go off and write their own engine?
Yeah, or Gran Turismo sell their engine and you buy a rally game and it's built on that, and a Formula One game and it's built on the same engine, because this stuff costs a lot of money to develop.
It does, but you're not seeing that happening. But you are seeing everybody use Unreal Engine because of the licensing terms that are on there, and it can produce some amazing things. But I thought Halo was an interesting case in point when you have the might of Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard behind such an established IP as Halo, and they're using Unreal Engine.
And it is, or was, the Xbox flagship game, wasn't it? It was a real differentiator. It made people buy the Xbox just to get Halo. Excuse me.
It did, even though it started on the Mac, as we recall.
It did start on the Mac. Microsoft acquired Bungie at the right time, didn't they?
They very much did. I've been playing this week a little bit of Civ 6 because I want to make sure it worked nicely, and sort of a bit of preparation for Civ 7, which isn't a million miles away. Working beautifully on Linux, very happy with it, so it was just to say that I had. But for some reason yesterday I fell into a Gran Turismo 7 rat hole, and there has been some updates to that since I last played it.
I'm really impressed. So Civ 6, I've had a similar thought to you of, maybe I should have a go at Civ 6 because I haven't played it for a long time and want to warm up a little bit for Civ 7, which is coming out in February. So I'm pleased that you're having a similar thought to me. I haven't really got around to it because I think I need a bit of time available to sink into it, which I'm struggling with. But I'm loving that you've picked up Gran Turismo 7. There's just been an update out for it last week, I think. They keep chipping away and adding more cars, more menus, more tracks, more things. And you can now get Michelin tyres in it. You know, they've added loads since it's come out, and I've paid no more money for it, which I feel a bit bad of. I would have happily given them another 50 quid because I just get so much value out of the game. But for the 70 quid I spent on it, I've easily had that value out of that game.
Yeah, there's been a few sort of quality of life updates in it for sure. There's sort of new weekly challenges have come along, which seems to give you quite a lot of money to get your car collections up and all that stuff.
I do play every week to do the challenges because I get quite a bit of money, and then I can then go and close some of the menu books where you have to buy specific cars. So I've been doing that.
Yeah, the menu book confuses me slightly. So the point of the menu books for non-Gran Turismo listeners is that you complete a car collection of, say, open-wheel sports cars. So you've got a KTM Crossbow, a BAC Mono, and
I can't
whatever
remember. But you get 3. You have to buy 3 cars, and then you unlock something else.
But how you open them all up is slightly opaque to me. Sometimes they're in the used car showroom, sometimes they're in the new car showroom, sometimes they're just not available, and it makes it quite difficult sometimes to go and complete that.
Yeah, I think you have to play for a reasonable amount of time because some will be legend cars, some you need an invite to buy, and some of them cost a lot of money. So I think to get all of them, it's quite a commitment, but I think they've got a good mechanic of making you come back and play more, you know, because they've got the weekly challenges. There's so much of the game to complete. They've got enough of a mix in there to keep it fresh, I think.
And the other thing they've added is how much of the game you have completed. So when I logged in yesterday, I'd completed 36% of the game, which, considering I thought I'd finished it once upon a time, was quite a surprise to me. Anyway, when I finished playing it yesterday, I'd completed 42% of the game.
That's not a bad stab then.
It wasn't bad. A couple of hours wasted or enjoyed playing Gran Turismo because I'd had enough of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I don't know how much we've actually completed of it, but there are so many. It's kind of like GTA. There's so many little bits that make up the main percentage that you've got side things to go and do and buy and play. So it's a big time sink for a game, but I'm still enjoying it.
There you go. I'm throwing you a bone after all the Balatro and Slay the Spire talk.
Yeah, I just think for the money required and the value they keep adding, you know, they've built a community and they keep adding to it. It's a really good game, and there's not many car games in that space, I don't think.
You're not wrong. Should we do a quick main show?
Let's do it.
So first thing off, and I've realised I have a pattern where I declare on the show I'm going to go and do a thing, and then I don't do the thing. This morning, after a very brief conversation with you, I cancelled my order for an iPhone, which we talked about last week.
Yeah, so you've got an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and you ordered an iPhone 16
Pro.
I couldn't remember if you'd ordered a Pro Max. I was struggling with that. So you were going to downsize handset size, but get all the new latest internals.
Yes. So, and my thinking was the battery is. I don't know if it's toasted, and I don't know if it's the beta. Maybe beta 6 will have fixed a lot of my issues with the battery, but the battery seems to die an awful lot faster than it used to anyway. And Chris is nodding
I
here.
am feeling the same pains as you. So I've got the same phone as you, just the smaller one, the regular Pro, and I've got the 15, and I'm feeling the same pain. I'm having to manage my battery a little more than I would like for a phone that I've only had for 1 year.
Yep, and we went through our battery life left last week, so we're both in the 90%. It shouldn't be as bad as it is. So let's hope it's beta. Other than that, the new operating system is hard on your battery. Anyway, I went through a whole process of reading the reviews of the 16, the 16 Pro, the 16 Pro Max, and the consensus was they're not that different from last year's phone. And actually, the camera control button is a pain. So on reflection, I thought, no, I don't need one of these phones. I'll save myself, I know I was getting a trade and I'll save myself 549 quid and I'll look to the future for what's coming next.
Yeah, so I think you've been in a similar boat to me. I was thinking, maybe I could just get a newer phone. I'll get the better battery. I probably won't notice much else. And I kind of did this last year because there weren't many differences in last year's phone. But a friend of mine had the new iPhone 16. I think he went from a 14, so he'd waited 2 years. And I put his phone next to mine. I was like, it's only a little bit bigger. The actual 6.3 to 6.1 is nothing. That wasn't as bad as I thought. And I tried out the two cameras, and then I was like, actually, the cameras look pretty much exactly the same, even when I was playing with macro mode and the wide-angle lens. And that's when I was like, actually, I'm fine. I don't need this, because I would probably order the same colour, and it would literally look the same. So I've parked it as well. I wonder if the battery is depleting because I've got Apple Intelligence turned on, and it's a beta, and I'm hoping that when the final version comes out, they will be doing some work to resolve that.
Yeah, so on that, let's just jump over one story and come back. Apple Intelligence. It's apparently going to launch on the 28th of October for the version that you and I have now. Unless you're in the UK, it's still going to expect to be in United States English, I think, in order for it to work. So as Chris was saying earlier, 18.2 will come with British English and a couple of other languages. I wouldn't turn it on, would you?
Not overly. I quite like the new animation, and that's probably about it. I think the way the side of the screen glows is quite nice. It annoys me in the car because it looks a bit messy when you use CarPlay. But no, I wouldn't be in a rush for Apple Intelligence. For me, it's just Siri. I haven't used any of the writing tools. The summary I find often is wrong for me or conflates two messages. So I'm not in a rush. I'll see what this beta looks like, but if it's this that's draining my battery, I would be very tempted to turn it off.
So I have a real example of it, the Apple Intelligence getting my text wrong. I went to Cardiff on Saturday to see my daughters. There was a bunch of the dads at school were texting at the same time. Somebody had suggested, let's go for a curry tonight. There'd been a bunch of responses. The first response of which was, sorry, I can't go for a curry tonight because I'm running the Cardiff Half Marathon tomorrow. Not me, my friend Pete. Apple Intelligence summarised that as, this evening's dinner plans are confirmed.
Fantastic.
Which couldn't be more wrong, really, could it?
I mean, whoever suggested going for a curry, give that man or woman a medal, because that's a genius idea. No, but this is the problem I have with it. You read the summary and then you actually go and look at the message like, no, that's not what it says at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. Is it because our phones are in British English and it's getting confused? But I can't see it myself. I was struggling to see how it was getting the wrong end of the stick.
No, I've heard similar from other podcasts that Apple Intelligence just gets it wrong. So this has spurred a thought on me that if they don't get this more right, if they launch it exactly as it is now, it's not going to be Apple Intelligence, it's going to be Apple Unintelligence or Apple Stupidity. And in the same way Siri is forever tainted as the stupid voice assistant, if they launch something this stupid again to the market and everybody starts having these sorts of experience with it, they're about to taint 60% of what of the advertising of what's coming next, and the next phones. They're good, solid phones if you haven't had an upgrade in a couple of years. But the big hang your hat on feature, this is what you're waiting for: Apple Intelligence. And if you watch the adverts I've given you the first link for, they're really touting it as being something special. And I'm not seeing anything particularly special in this.
No, me neither. You can kind of see why they've kept the name Siri, because it isn't that revolutionary, and I think it's going to be, again, Apple doing what Apple do, iterations over years rather than something revolutionary straight out the gate, because I think they were just too far behind.
They were too far behind and they haven't caught up.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I like I said, I haven't used the writing tools. They may be better, but for the whole Siri piece, it's just old Siri. It's no better.
Maybe a magic switch will drop on the day they release it to everybody and it'll get better, or perhaps this version 18.6 will be better, but I really haven't seen it improve very much over the course of the betas.
I would concur with that statement, but maybe we're not using the bits they're working on, we're just using the old things that series always done, and I wonder if they can't give everything all the effort, so they're just focusing on this new stuff and they're not fixing the normal stuff like set timers and those kinds of things.
Things that matter. All right, well, again, you're a little more positive about it than I am, a little, but not drastically so in this case, so
I could happily turn it off, I think.
In news that might be better for Apple, or for those of us who are, always looking at what Apple are releasing, however, Mark Gurman has announced that, or leaked, that there's probably going to be new M4 iMacs and iPad Mini 7, all to launch on November the 1st. Are you in the market for an iPad Mini?
I don't know. So that's not a firm no. I did have an iPad Mini and I did sell it to a friend who uses it all the time. Part of me is because I'd like it for taking notes instead of my Kindle, and I probably wouldn't sign it into everything for all the distractions. But equally, part of me doesn't need any more devices. But I'm curious just to see where they go with it. I'd like them to keep updating it. It will be time to see what chips they put into it, because it needs to run Apple Intelligence if it's going to be a future-proof device. But no, I'm curious just to see where they go with that line. Do they improve the screen on it? I love my iPad Pro. I'm so glad I bought it. I bought the big one with all the storage. Not planning to upgrade it, but it's a fantastic device. I do the newspaper on it. I even do crosswords in it with the pencil, take a screen grab. I just love that device. So I'm not overly in the market, but I'm curious to see where they go. I think that's what I will go with.
So I am excited to see M4 chips properly across the line, not just in the iPad Pro. I'd like to see it in a real device. Sorry, Chris. One that is actually of interest to me that I can do things with. I've rode back a little bit on how out of control it seemed to be getting with all the notification alerts and all the things we had to turn off in macOS. So I'm more excited now I was about the prospect of new, smaller, potentially Mac Minis, improved M4 Mac Studios. Whatever comes to the laptops will be good, although immediately I'll have the old, I won't have the latest MacBook Pro anymore, but that's okay. If we're on the cycle of how much better things have got since the M1, I wouldn't say things are drastically much better than the M1. I think we've talked about this before. The M1 was such a stellar chip that it's really quite hard to blow it out the water. But I think this is good, and bring these chips to the rest of the line. And if they don't increase the prices, there's a couple of interesting devices in this lineup.
Yeah, so it does feel like the M4 is going to be in everything. You're going to have it in the iPad Pro, which you've already got. It's hopefully going to come this autumn, winter to the MacBook Pros, to the Mac Mini, and then I assume next year it's going to come then to the Studio and the Pro, Mac Pro, and then the Airs. And so I think, give it 6 months from now as a ballpark, everything will have an M4 in it. The M3 will be dead as the shortest lived chip ever. The M2 probably will have gone. The M1 will have gone. And it feels like this will be the first time, I think, that we're going to have M4s in everything, since we probably had the M1 generation of chips that went in everything. So it's weird that they did the M3 at all, because it was just in some Airs and in some MacBook. It was just a laptop chip in essence. So it was an odd chip that they did. But it does feel like M4 is going to reunify everything. It's going to be curious to see where they go with it. Is it going to really be built for Apple Intelligence? They're going to say it is, but is it actually? But no, I think there's some good stuff coming. I'm curious to see the new Mac Mini. It'd be nice to see a new form factor, to see where they go with the design, because they've nailed their design lately, I think, on all of their stuff. I think like the MacBook Pro release has been fantastic. The MacBook Air was a great design. The Studio was a good design. I'm curious to see where they go. Apparently we're going to get a new iMac as well this autumn, so an M4 iMac. They did do it last year with the M3 in it. I'm curious to see if we're going to get USB-C peripherals. I hope we do, because it'll be about time. And I'd like a Studio display, but I'd imagine that will come next year when they bring out a new Mac Studio. Whether I'll buy one is a different question, but I want to see them keep iterating on all the lines rather than release something and then never touch it again, because that's frustrating.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you can see what makes money in the lineup, can't you? The laptops make money, therefore they get updated the most regularly. The iMacs, occasionally people buy them, so they throw them a bone now and then. The Studio Macs are the most powerful Macs, so that they get updated on their own schedule as well. The M3 was a weird chip. It was a smaller, it was a die shrink, so it was smaller nanometers. The M4 is the same chip, but with a better production process, really. So there's only very modest gains between the M3 and the M4, which is why the M3 chip, wasn't pushed out as aggressively as it might have been, because it was costing them too much money as part of the process. So we're expecting 14-inch MacBook Pro, 16-inch MacBook Pro, M4 Pro, M4 Max chips in those, new iMac with an M4, new redesigned Mac Mini with M4 and M4 Pro, and a new iPad Mini. And then later, probably in 2025, we're talking M4 13 and 15-inch MacBook Airs, new iPhone SE, new 11-inch and 13-inch iPad Airs, new Magic keyboards for the iPad Air, and refreshed AirTags. And then Mac Studio and Mac Pros also in development, but won't ship until mid next year, which is a long time.
It is a long time. I think we've got some good stuff coming. I find it odd that they're going to do new iPad Airs next year. That seems bizarre to me because we've just had new iPad Airs. But the rest, we've got some great products coming. And to me, actually, right now, the October event potentially seems a lot more exciting than the September event, if I'm being honest.
I mean, my only questioning about this is, why would you delay the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro? They're not going to change the form factor. Why not just smack the chips into those and then they'll all be ready for the M5 next year? If you just buy an M4 and you got to wait another 2 months and then they start dropping M5 chips, that's going to put people off buying M4 Mac Studios and Mac Pros.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe some people would buy a Mini and then buy a Studio as well. I don't know whether they do it like that. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not ready. I don't know.
I don't think it's that hard, is it? You just swap the guts out. There's plenty of space in them for the silicon on chip, and the cooling was good, and they sorted all that. Certainly in the Mac Pro, there's plenty of space. There's nothing to put in there. The actual compute part of the Mac Pro is minuscule compared to the box it comes in.
Yeah, it's nothing, is it? But also I wonder, do they want to spread it out a little bit so they can have some different events, get some different press? I don't know.
Don't know. Anyway, interesting to speculate about, and we'll keep our ears to the ground if there's going to be an event in October.
Yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to it, and right now, after living through the September event that I didn't really enjoy, I'm actually really looking forward to this.
Yep, me too. Nice to be optimistic about something. App of the week.
Go for it.
It's called Mac Whisper. Link in the show notes. What it is OpenAI's audio model is called Whisper. This wraps it up in a nice little Mac layer for you. You can run this on your own machine. It's one of the more open source models that OpenAI has released. This is just a developer, the same developer that's put in the app that will push the notifications of screen recording and things down the road as well onto your Mac. Every week I use it. I drag our show into it. It does me a transcription in 2 minutes of our 1 hour and 15-minute shows, or however long we've gone, really, really quickly, very, very accurately, gets a lot of British slang and all the rest of it in there, and then I can use it for putting the chapter markers in, so it saves me an awful lot of time. It's a really good app if you want some audio transcribed really quickly. It will do subtitles for YouTube and all sorts of things as well, and he'd like to give you some money for the pro version of it, but all I need it for is the free one, and it's a great little app, Mac Whisper.
And this person, Geordie Brunin, I don't know if I've said his name correctly, Bellamy, he's done a lot of apps. Like, he's got a real archive of apps there, so fair play to him.
Yep, it's good. I'm a big fan. I have given him money in the past. I can't remember exactly what product I bought from him, but very good.
So, thing of the week for me then is I've gone for modern stereo in a classic car. We spoke about Porsche before. I did buy an 18-year-old Porsche, and then I managed to acquire a stereo. I managed to get it on sale, which was good, and so I've bought an 18-year-old car, bought a stereo that Porsche recently released about within 2 years ago, I think, that puts CarPlay in it. It fits perfectly. It looks like it's part of the same era. They've done a really good job here of releasing a modern head unit for an 18-year-old car that it's got the same colour of surround as the rest of the interface. It's obviously aged 18 years, and it looks fantastic, fits really well. They provide you with absolutely zero instructions on how to fit it, but thankfully some lovely people on YouTube have done videos and point out all the bits to do. It was very easy to install. The only bit I haven't done is the DAB antennas because they're in a trickier spot, but what a fantastic thing Porsche have done there for people that want a slightly older car but some modern tech. I think it is really cool, and I love it.
Is it rude to ask how much it cost?
The stereo?
Yeah.
How much do you think it cost?
An Alpine head unit that was all singing and all dancing would probably be about 800 quid.
Yeah, you need to put it's a bit like buying Apple equipment. You got to put the the Porsche tax on the top. So
Porsche tax.
I think these usually go. I think I saw one for about £1,600, including VAT here in the UK. I got it for about £1,200, and because I bought it on eBay from a Porsche garage, eBay were going, if you spend over 500 quid, we give you 50 quid off. So I then got 50 quid off through eBay, which was a bit of a bonus. So it was quite a bit of money. Install normally is about £1,000, but I did it myself. Like I say, with a bit of YouTube on my iPad on the passenger seat while I did it. It's actually very straightforward to do. But I just think they've done such a good job of it, and they ship you all the cables in the box. Because what I hadn't realised is like the auto changer and the satellite maps were all done with fibre optic cables 20 years ago. So you've got these optical cables going into the boot for where the auto changer was, and they needed basically like a terminator on it just to send the signal back. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. But they give you all the stuff you need. It's just really well done, and like I say, it looks like it's meant to be in the car. Because I could have gone and bought an Alpine head unit, which probably would have done more, but just wouldn't have fitted, and I would have looked a little bit out of place. But they've done such a good job with it. My one complaint would be it doesn't have wireless CarPlay, and I've had to buy a £20 dongle to put in the USB to turn it into wireless. I also bought a £60 one because I thought I'd try the two out. The £60 one is rubbish and laggy and slow. The £20 one, absolutely amazing. And I'm going to buy another one for my wife because it's only £20.
Well, you can make that your thing of the week next week, because I want that recommendation too, because my Golf isn't wireless CarPlay and I'd quite like that.
It's amazing. Yeah, I'll happily dig out the link. But it's great. And CarPlay should be in every car, or Android Auto. It does do Android Auto as well for Android people. But great they're doing it, I think. Fantastic.
Fair enough. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, I think so. So thanks everybody for listening. If you want to get in contact, Rod is at g5maniac@marston.scot. I'm at _CJP at marston.social. You can watch on YouTube if you go to our website, which is wakefromsleep.com, and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.